All right, everyone, get ready because today we're going deep into a case that's truly strange.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the story of Robert Maury, or as he's better known, the Tipster Killer.
The Tipster Killer.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill serial killer story.
No.
Maury didn't just, commit murders.
Right.
He called in tips about them
What?
anonymously to the police,
Wow.
taunting them while he played this, deadly game.
Oh, that's chilling.
It is. It is.
It's a fascinating psychological puzzle. Most, criminals, they try to distance themselves from the crimes, but Maury, he seemed to crave a spotlight.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what on earth drives a person to that.
It really does.
Well, we've got a lot of sources here. We've got court records, news reports, psychological profiles, and we're going to try to unpack it all.
Okay.
Trace Maury's path
Mm-hmm.
from seemingly ordinary beginnings to these killing acts that earned him that nickname,
Right.
the Tipster Killer.
And we'll examine the investigation,
Yes.
the missteps, the breakthroughs,
Of course.
and ultimately how those anonymous calls were his undoing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Robert Maury was born in 1958 in Crescent City, California.
Okay.
Not long after, his family moved to Anderson. The sources hint at a difficult childhood,
Oh.
with allegations of abuse by his father.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious about how much those early experiences might have shaped him.
Early childhood trauma can definitely have a really profound impact, especially when it comes to abuse. There's often a sense of powerlessness, a loss of control. It can lead to deep-seated anger and resentment, even a desire to regain that control later in life, maybe in unhealthy ways.
Okay, so fast forward to 1985. Maury is dishonorably discharged from the Army for marijuana possession.
Mm-hmm.
And for our listeners who aren't familiar with military jargon, a dishonorable discharge isn't just, a slap on the wrist.
Right.
It's the worst kind of discharge. It
Yeah.
carries some serious consequences.
Absolutely, yeah. It signifies severe misconduct and can make it incredibly difficult to find employment, access benefits, just reintegrate back into civilian life.
Right.
This kind of rejection and setback, it could fuel any underlying anger or instability.
Yeah. He ends up settling in Cottonwood, working as a landscaper. He's also doing some tried flower arranging.
Oh, okay.
It seems pretty ordinary on the surface.
Right.
But in late May of 1985, his landlord, 48-year-old Avril Deanna Whedon, disappears.
This is where the story takes a dark turn. When they questioned him, Maury denied any involvement at all. But just a few weeks later, on June 19th, an anonymous call comes into the Shasta County Secret Witness Program.
Right, and for listeners who might not know, secret witness programs are designed to encourage people to come forward with information about crimes.
Mm-hmm.
They offer anonymity and often rewards to entice these tipsters.
Exactly. So this anonymous caller claims to know something about Whedon's disappearance. But he's really interested in the reward money. Authorities, they're desperate for leads. They start negotiating. Then on August 8th, the caller ups the ante.
Oh.
Yeah, he claims he's found Whedon's body,
Wow.
but again demands a reward for the location.
That's cold-blooded.
Yeah.
So it's like he's turning a human life into a bargaining chip.
It is.
Did they give him the reward?
So the authorities agreed, and the caller directs them to a wooded area near Redding.
And that's where they find her.
That's where they find Whedon's body, partially buried and wrapped in cardboard. The autopsy. Grim. Skull fractures and a fractured throat bone.
So she was strangled.
Indicating she was strangled.
Oh, that's horrific.
Yeah.
But it gets even more twisted, right?
Yeah.
The tipster, he calls again.
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
Now he's dropping more details about the murder.
Okay.
The date, the time, the weapon used. He even suggests the killer's name is Robert or Bob.
Okay, so he's really playing with them.
It's like he's basking in the attention, reveling in his ability to manipulate this whole investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, at this point, the authorities have no idea that the person feeding them these clues is their prime suspect.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now 2 years pass, and we come to June 25th, 1987.
Okay.
A young woman named Belinda Jo Stark is last seen by her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
She was known to, come and go. So initially, no one suspects anything is wrong.
Right.
But on August 8th.
Hold on,
Yeah.
August 8th.
Yeah.
Notice the date.
Oh, wow.
Exactly 2 years to the day after the call about Whedon's body.
Oh, wow.
Our anonymous caller strikes again. Same MO. Claims to have found a body, demands a reward, even throws in a fake name this time.
He's getting cocky.
Yeah.
So where does he lead them this time?
He leads investigators to a remote area near Palm Avenue and Monte Vista Road. The body is identified as Belinda Stark.
And again, the similarities to the Whedon case are chilling.
And just when you think it can't get any more disturbing,
Oh.
another body is discovered. September 22nd, just 250 yards from where they found Stark. This time it's 20-year-old Dawn Marie Berryhill.
Another young woman, another suspected victim of the Tipster Killer. It's clear a pattern is emerging. But the question is, how long had this been going on?
That's a good question because, while Maury is definitively linked to these three murders,
Right.
he also becomes a suspect in two other unsolved cases from 1983.
Really?
The victims, Laura Stewart and Helen Faye Generous, they were both found strangled.
So potentially Maury was active even earlier than initially thought?
Potentially, yeah.
But if those earlier cases were his work, why didn't the anonymous calls start until 1985? What changed?
It's a puzzle, for sure. Perhaps the earlier crimes were more impulsive, less planned. Maybe he hadn't yet developed this twisted desire to, insert himself into the investigation.
Right.
Or there could be something else entirely at play, something we haven't even considered yet.
Well, let's get back to those confirmed cases and those anonymous calls, because eventually those calls would be Maury's undoing.
They say pride comes before a fall. In this case, it was Maury's need for control, that desire to play puppet master, that ultimately brought the investigation right to his doorstep. Remember those reward payouts, the ones Maury demanded for his tips?
Yeah.
Well, they totaled $2,000.
Okay.
And it turns out he used that money pretty unwisely. Bought a motorcycle, paid off some family debts.
Really?
Yeah.
So he basically profited from his own crimes. That's a whole other level of messed up.
It is, yeah. But it also gave investigators a solid lead.
Right, of course.
That financial trail, that was major.
Yeah.
Authorities, they finally realized their anonymous tipster might be someone they already knew.
Okay, yeah.
Someone who stood to gain financially from those rewards.
And since Maury was already on their radar because of his connection to Whedon, I'm guessing they started looking at him more closely. So what happened next? Did they just go and confront him?
Not right away. They needed more than just a suspicion.
Right.
They needed hard evidence to link him to those calls.
Right, of course.
Enter Fire Marshal Roy Del Carlo.
Okay.
Pretty sharp investigator.
Yeah.
Came up with a plan. He posed as the chairman of the secret witness program.
Oh.
Arranged a meeting with Maury.
Wow.
Wore a wire the whole time.
So they got him talking on tape.
Yep.
Oh, man. That must have been the moment everything clicked.
It was big, but not a slam dunk.
Oh.
Voice analysis confirmed Maury's voice matched the recordings of the tipster calls.
Okay.
But they needed more for a conviction.
Right.
Remember that fingerprint they found on the envelope with the reward money?
Yeah.
It was matched for Maury.
Okay.
And then they found another one, this time inside Belinda Stark's purse.
So not only was he calling in tips about his own murders, but his fingerprints were at the crime scenes too.
Yep.
That's some seriously incriminating evidence.
Pretty clear picture. And remember, Maury was meticulous.
Right.
The fact that he slipped up and left behind those fingerprints speaks volumes.
About
The pressure he might have been feeling.
Right.
The arrogance that led to his downfall.
So on November 7th, 1987, Maury is arrested at his home, charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. With all that evidence stacked against him, you'd think he'd confess, right?
You'd think so. But, surprisingly, Maury maintained his innocence.
What?
His defense, almost laughable, he claimed he just stumbled upon the bodies and being a good Samaritan, reported them.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's a pretty hard sell, considering all the evidence. It's almost as if he couldn't accept responsibility, even when faced with the consequences.
It's possible. It's possible he truly believed his own lies. That he had somehow constructed this alternate reality.
Right.
Where he was the hero, not the villain.
That's a scary thought.
Or maybe it was just a desperate attempt to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Even as it crumbled around him.
Well, the jury didn't buy it. They found him guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder, and they sentenced him to death.
A just verdict, considering the gravity of his crimes. But his story, it doesn't end there.
Oh.
In 2003, Maury, he appealed his sentence.
Okay.
Argued that his First Amendment rights were violated.
How so?
Because secret witness shared his information with law enforcement.
Okay.
He claimed they broke their promise of anonymity.
Oh, interesting.
Which, he said was a violation of his right to privacy.
So he was basically trying to use the very system he manipulated to get himself off the hook.
Exactly. But the court, they rejected his appeal, stated that secret witness was within its rights to share information relevant to an ongoing investigation.
Right.
They have an obligation to cooperate with law enforcement to solve crimes.
Of course, yeah.
even if it means, compromising the anonymity of a tipster.
It's a fascinating legal wrinkle, and it really raises questions about the limits and anonymity in these types of programs. What happens when the person providing the information is actually the perpetrator?
Right.
Is there an ethical obligation to protect their identity, even if it hinders justice?
It's complex. No easy answers.
Right.
But in Maury's case, the court, they felt that his actions and the gravity of his crimes outweighed any claim to anonymity.
Which brings us to the present. Robert Maury remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison, but due to legal challenges and a moratorium on capital punishment in California, his execution remains on hold. So he's in a kind of legal limbo.
Yeah.
Just like the answers to some of the questions surrounding his motivations.
We've explored the events, the investigation, the trial.
Right.
But the why, it remains a puzzle.
Yeah.
What drove a seemingly ordinary man to commit these horrific acts?
Right.
And then insert himself into the investigation so brazenly.
So we've spent a lot of time in this deep dive just laying out the facts of this case.
Right.
It's a lot to process. I mean, Robert Maury, the tipster killer, called in tips about his own murder, demanded reward money.
It's unbelievable.
It is, but as we've been saying, the biggest question that lingers is why?
Right.
What would lead someone to do something like that?
It's the question that, keeps criminologists and psychologists up at night. There's rarely a simple answer.
Right.
When it comes to the motivations of a serial killer.
Of course.
But I think by examining, Maury's actions, his background, the patterns in the case,
Yeah.
we might be able to shed some light on what drove him.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me from the beginning was this intense need for control that Maury seemed to exhibit. He didn't just commit the murders, he orchestrated the entire investigation.
Yeah.
Calling the shots, leaving the authorities scrambling to catch up.
It's it's a classic power dynamic, especially when we consider the possibility of, an abusive childhood.
Right.
When a child experiences prolonged abuse, they're robbed of their agency, their ability to control their own lives.
Right.
This can manifest later as a desperate need to, exert power over others, to dominate, manipulate, as a way of compensating for that early loss of control.
So in a way, Maury was trying to regain that lost power.
Maybe.
But in the most twisted and horrific way imaginable.
It's possible.
By controlling the lives and deaths of his victims.
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
But it does seem to fit the pattern.
Right.
Think about those tipster calls. He wasn't just providing information. He was dictating terms.
Right.
Demanding rewards, setting deadlines. It was all about control. About being the one in charge.
Yeah, and those calls, it seems like he also wanted recognition.
Recognition.
Maybe he needed to make sure that people knew it was him.
Oh, okay.
That he was the one behind these horrific acts.
Absolutely. The desire for notoriety, it's pretty common among serial killers.
Okay.
They crave attention, the fear, the infamy.
Yeah.
It's a way of validating their actions, feeling important, powerful,
right.
Even godlike.
At the same time, he was so reckless, calling in those tips from his own phone, using his real name to collect the reward money.
Yeah.
It's almost like he wanted to get caught.
That's where the psychology gets even more complex.
Yeah.
It's possible there was a subconscious desire for self-destruction.
Okay.
A part of him that couldn't handle the guilt, the weight of his actions.
Wow.
Or maybe it was the thrill of the game.
The game.
The challenge of outsmarting the police. That ultimately drove him to take those risks.
So it's this mix of these competing urges, the need for control and recognition, coupled with a possible self-destructive impulse.
Right.
It's a picture of a very troubled individual, but it still doesn't fully explain why he chose this particular path.
There may not be a clear answer.
Yeah.
We can analyze, speculate, but the true depths of Robert Maury's psyche, they remain a mystery.
And that's what makes this case so unsettling. We may never fully understand the darkness that led him down this road. He sits on death row, his future uncertain, but the questions he raised about the nature of evil, the motivations behind such horrific acts, those questions continue to linger.
It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming evidence, a conviction, a sentence, there are still mysteries that may never be fully solved.
Wow.
The human mind is a complex and often terrifying place. And sometimes, the only answers we have are the ones we create.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive into the case of the Tipster Killer. It's a case that, really challenges our understanding of human nature, of the motivations behind violence and evil. And perhaps that's the most important takeaway, the reminder that we have to stay vigilant, seeking to understand these dark impulses, not just to solve crimes, but to prevent them from happening in the first place. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive. CA28.